The Grand Hotel shone like a diamond against the evening sky. Fancy cars dropped off people dressed in clothes that cost more than Maria Cortez made in 3 months of cleaning houses. She stood at the entrance, her heart beating fast in her chest. "You can do this," she whispered to herself, clutching her small purse. The security man looked at her twice before checking her name on his list. She didn't blame him. Her faded blue dress stood out among all the sparkly gowns and black suits. Maria was only here because her daughter Lucia had called that morning, her voice rough with fever. "Mama, I can't make my shift tonight. The catering company will fire me if I don't find a replacement." So here was Maria, 54 years old, stepping into a world that wasn't meant for people like her. The massive glass doors opened to a room that took her breath away. Crystal chandeliers hung from ceilings higher than the entire first floor of her small apartment building. The floors were so shiny she could almost see her reflection in them. "You must be Lucia's mother," said a stern woman in a black uniform. "I'm Mrs. Patel, the event manager. Follow me to the kitchen, quickly now." Maria nodded, following the woman through crowds of laughing, chatting rich people who didn't even notice her. She kept her eyes down, not wanting to bump into anyone important. The kitchen was busy with servers rushing around, chefs shouting orders, and the smell of expensive food filling the air. Mrs. Patel handed her a white apron and gloves. "Arrange these exactly like the picture," she ordered, pointing to trays of tiny colorful foods Maria had never seen before. "Then serve the guests in the main hall. Don't speak unless spoken to. Understand?" Maria nodded again, tying the apron around her waist. Her hands were rough from years of scrubbing bathrooms and floors, so different from the soft, manicured hands of the guests she would serve. As she carefully placed each tiny food item on the silver trays, her mind wandered back to another life, so long ago it sometimes felt like a dream. She remembered the small church in her village with its old piano. How the visiting music teacher had gasped when 10-year-old Maria sat down and played by ear a song she'd heard only once. "You have a gift from God," the teacher had told her. For 8 wonderful years, Maria had played that piano whenever she could. Her parents had scraped together money for lessons, proudly telling neighbors their daughter would be a famous musician someday. Then came the letter from the music school in the big city, a full scholarship, a chance at a different life. That same week, her father had his first stroke. Maria blinked away the memory as Mrs. Patel called sharply, "Those trays need to go out now." She picked up a heavy silver tray, balancing it carefully as she made her way to the main hall. The room was even more impressive than the entrance, filled with beautiful people, their jewelry catching the light with every movement. At the far end stood a large grand piano, its polished surface reflecting the chandeliers above. Maria's heart gave a little jump at the sight. How long had it been since she'd even touched a piano? 28 years, 3 months, and 12 days. Not that she was counting. She moved silently between groups of guests, offering food without making eye contact. Most took what they wanted without acknowledging her. Some didn't even pause their conversations. She was invisible, just another server, just another pair of hands. A loud burst of laughter made her turn. A group of younger guests stood nearby, drinks in hand, looking slightly bored despite the luxury surrounding them. One young man in an expensive suit kept glancing around, as if searching for entertainment. His eyes landed on Maria, then moved to the piano behind her. A slow smile spread across his face, not a kind one. Maria felt a chill. Something was about to happen, and somehow she knew that old piano would be part of it. Maria tried to make herself even more invisible as she moved between the guests with her tray. The young man in the expensive suit was still watching her. He whispered something to his friends, and they all laughed, glancing her way. The food on her tray was nearly gone when the young man stepped directly in front of her, blocking her path back to the kitchen. His cologne was too strong, and his smile didn't reach his eyes. "Hey there," he said, his words slightly slurred from too many drinks. The gold name tag on his chest read, "Tyler Thompson. What's your name?" Maria kept her eyes down. "Maria, sir." "Maria," he repeated, saying it louder than necessary. A few heads turned their way. "Are you enjoying the party, Maria?" One of his friends, a woman with a sparkly dress and perfect hair, giggled. "Tyler, stop it." But Tyler didn't stop. Everyone looks so bored at these things, don't they? He waved his hand around the room. Same people, same talk about money and business. We need something different tonight. Maria nodded politely and tried to step around him, but he moved to block her again. I heard the piano player cancelled last minute, Tyler said, his voice getting louder. More people were turning to watch now. That poor piano hasn't been touched all night. Maria's eyes flickered to the grand piano in the corner. Earlier, she had overheard two men in suits talking about how the hired pianist had declared it unplayable, something about keys sticking and the sound being off. You work hard all day, don't you, Maria? Tyler continued, his tone making it clear this wasn't friendly conversation. Wouldn't you like to sit down for a while? Maybe play us a little tune? His friends were all watching now, barely hiding their smirks. This was their entertainment for the night, making fun of the cleaning lady. I'm sorry, sir. I need to get back to work, Maria said softly. Oh, come on, Tyler insisted, taking the nearly empty tray from her hands and giving it to one of his friends. I'm asking nicely, just one song. More people had gathered around, curious about the commotion. Maria felt her face grow hot with embarrassment. She looked around for Mrs. Patel or any of the other staff, but they were nowhere to be seen. I don't play piano, she lied, hoping he would lose interest. Everyone can play something, Tyler said, grabbing her wrist. Not hard enough to hurt, but firmly enough that she couldn't easily pull away. Just a few notes, for fun. He started leading her toward the piano, and his friends followed. Other guests were watching with mixed expressions, some amused, some uncomfortable, most just curious what would happen next. Tyler, maybe that's enough, said an older man who looked a bit like Tyler, probably his father. But he said it without much force, like he was used to his son's behavior. It's just a bit of fun, Dad, Tyler called back. The piano's broken anyway. No one can make it sound good. They'd reached the piano, and Tyler dramatically pulled out the bench. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced to the room, his voice carrying. Our server Maria has kindly agreed to provide tonight's entertainment. People were staring now at her worn dress, her servant's apron, her hands rough from years of cleaning. Some looked embarrassed for her. Others were smiling, expecting a joke at her expense. Mrs. Patel had appeared at the edge of the crowd, her face worried. She took a step forward, but stopped when the host of the party raised his hand slightly, curious to see what would happen. Maria stood frozen by the piano, her heart pounding. Tyler gestured to the bench with an exaggerated bow. Please, he said, show us what you can do. The room fell silent. Everyone was watching, waiting. Maria stood by the piano, feeling like she was caught in a bad dream. The room seemed to spin around her as all eyes locked on her face. Her throat went dry. She hadn't touched a piano in 28 years. Not since the day she had to choose between her music scholarship and her family. Tyler's smirking face waited for her embarrassment. His friends watched with phones half raised, ready to capture whatever awkward moment was coming. The rest of the crowd stared with a mix of pity, curiosity, and discomfort. I should get back to work, Maria whispered, her voice barely audible. Come on, just one little song, Tyler insisted, patting the piano bench. We're all waiting. Maria looked over at Mrs. Patel, hoping for rescue. The manager's face was tight with worry, but she gave a small nod, permission to do whatever would cause the least scene. Rich people always got their way in places like this. A memory flashed in Maria's mind. Her father in his hospital bed, tubes in his nose, holding her acceptance letter from the music school. Go, he had said. Don't worry about us. But she couldn't go. Her mother was already working 2 jobs. Someone had to take care of him during the day, cook the meals, clean the house, give him his medicine. Her younger brothers were still in school. Maybe just a simple song, someone in the crowd suggested, their voice kind but unhelpful. Maria took a deep breath. She could play something very basic and get it over with. Pretend she only knew a beginner's tune. Then they'd laugh a little and let her go back to being invisible. Slowly, she sat down on the bench. It felt both strange and familiar, like meeting an old friend who had changed over the years. She adjusted her position, muscle memory from long ago guiding her hands to the right height. The crowd grew quiet. Tyler stepped back, confident he was about to get the entertainment he wanted. A cleaning lady fumbling at a fancy piano. Maria placed her fingers on the keys. They were cool and smooth, so different from the rough surfaces she cleaned all day. She pressed one key gently. The note rang out, slightly off but still musical. She pressed another, then another. 28 years melted away. She was 16 again, practicing in the church while sunlight streamed through colorful windows. She was 18, playing for her father as he smiled from his wheelchair. She was 20, teaching simple songs to her youngest brother on their neighbor's old upright piano before she left home to find work in the city. Her fingers began to move across the keys, finding their way despite the years. Some keys stuck, others were out of tune, but her hands remembered. They remembered everything. A soft melody began to form, not the simple tune she had planned, but the piece she had prepared for her music school audition all those years ago. Chopin. Her teacher had said no one played Chopin like Maria did. The first notes were hesitant, like a person testing ice on a frozen lake. But with each moment, her confidence grew. The broken notes of the piano didn't matter. Maria worked around them, adjusting her playing to avoid the worst keys, emphasizing others to balance the sound. The room had gone completely silent. Tyler's smirk faded, replaced by confusion. His friends lowered their phones, no longer interested in recording a joke. Everyone was listening now, really listening. Maria closed her eyes. The years of cleaning other people's houses, of raising her children alone after her husband left, of sending money back home until her parents passed, all of it was still there. But so was the music. It had been waiting inside her all along, patient and unchanged. And now it was pouring out, filling the room, spilling over like water from a dam that had finally broken. The music grew stronger with each passing moment. Maria's fingers danced across the keys, finding their way despite the piano's flaws. When she hit a broken key, she didn't stop or stumble. She simply worked around it, turning the piano's weakness into part of her performance. Tyler stood frozen, his drink halfway to his lips. The smirk had completely vanished from his face, replaced by genuine surprise. His friends had stopped whispering and giggling. Even the waitstaff had paused their work, trays balanced in their hands as they listened. The Chopin piece built slowly, like a wave gathering strength. Maria's body swayed gently with the music, her eyes still closed. She had forgotten where she was, forgotten the fancy party, the rich people, the embarrassment. There was only the music now, flowing through her like it had never left. An older woman in the crowd touched her pearl necklace and whispered to her husband, "That's Baladno, one in G minor. My goodness, she's playing it perfectly." The husband nodded, his eyes wide. And on a broken piano, no less. Mrs. Patel, the event manager, stood with her hand over her mouth. She had hired Maria as a favor to her daughter, expecting a hard worker, but nothing special. Now she couldn't believe her ears. This cleaning lady played like a concert pianist. As the music swelled, filling every corner of the grand room, people began to move closer to the piano. They came slowly, drawn by the beauty of what they were hearing. Phones appeared as guests started recording, but not to mock, to capture something unexpectedly wonderful. Maria reached a difficult passage in the piece, a part where her old teacher had made her practice for weeks until her fingers ached. She hit it perfectly, her hands flying across the keys with speed and precision that professional pianists would envy. A few guests gasped audibly. Tyler's father stepped forward, studying Maria's face with new interest. He was a businessman who recognized value when he saw it. And this woman had something valuable that had nothing to do with money. In the kitchen doorway, the chef and his assistants had gathered, their work momentarily forgotten. One of the young kitchen helpers wiped tears from his eyes, moved by the beauty of the music and the sight of this humble woman transformed at the keyboard. Maria felt the music building toward its powerful climax. Her hands stretched to reach difficult chords, her fingers finding strength she didn't know they still had after years of scrubbing floors and washing dishes. When one key stuck completely, she improvised around it so smoothly that it sounded intentional, like the music had been written that way. The room had grown completely still except for the magnificent sounds coming from the piano. The wealthy guests, who minutes before had barely noticed Maria's existence, now couldn't take their eyes off her. Their expressions showed not just surprise, but something deeper, respect. Tyler took a step back, bumping into one of his friends. The joke had backfired completely. He had meant to embarrass this woman, to use her for a moment's entertainment. Instead, she was giving one of the most genuine performances many in the room had ever witnessed. As Maria approached the end of the piece, she opened her eyes at last. The sight of all those people watching her, not with mockery but with awe, almost made her falter. But the music carried her forward, her fingers remembering what to do even as her mind tried to process what was happening. The final notes rang out, powerful and perfect, despite the piano's imperfections. Then silence filled the room, a silence so complete you could hear the gentle tick of the grand clock in the corner. For one breathless moment, no one moved. Maria sat still, her hands resting on the keys, her heart pounding in her chest. Then someone in the back of the room began to clap. The single person clapping was quickly joined by another, then another, until the whole room erupted in thunderous applause. People who moments ago wouldn't have looked Maria in the eye were now standing, their hands coming together in genuine appreciation. Maria remained seated at the piano, stunned by their reaction. This wasn't polite applause, it was the kind usually reserved for professional performers at concert halls. She felt her cheeks grow warm, unused to being the center of attention. "Encore!" Someone called from the back of the room. "Yes, please play something else," another voice added. Tyler stood off to the side, his face flushed with embarrassment. His attempt to humiliate her had completely backfired. His father gave him a stern look before turning back to watch Maria with newfound interest. Mrs. Patel approached the piano, leaning close to Maria's ear. "You never told me you could play like that," she whispered, her voice filled with wonder. "You never asked," Maria replied softly, surprising herself with her own boldness. The applause continued, showing no signs of stopping. The guests were clearly hungry for more. Maria looked down at her hands. The same hands that had scrubbed toilets earlier that day were now being celebrated for creating something beautiful. Taking a deep breath, she placed her fingers back on the keys. This time, she chose Liszt, something she'd practiced endlessly in her youth. The Hungarian Rhapsody No. 2 was a piece that showed off technical skill, and she knew it would work well, even with the piano's flaws. From the very first notes, the room fell silent again. But this time, Maria didn't close her eyes. She watched her hands as they moved across the keyboard with growing confidence. Years seemed to melt away with every measure. She wasn't just remembering how to play, she was remembering who she used to be. The piece was challenging, with lightning-fast runs up and down the keyboard. Maria's fingers flew, hitting every note with precision that professional pianists would envy. When she reached the famous fast section that even accomplished musicians struggled with, she didn't hesitate. Her hands became a blur, filling the room with cascades of perfect notes. People's mouths fell open. A woman in an expensive red dress whispered to her companion, "I saw this performed at Carnegie Hall last year, and this cleaning lady plays it better." An elderly man in the crowd had tears in his eyes. He had played piano all his life and knew exactly how difficult this piece was. Watching Maria navigate the broken instrument with such skill touched something deep inside him. One of the catering staff recorded the performance on her phone, her hand trembling slightly as she tried to capture this incredible moment. Later, she would show it to Maria's daughter Lucia, who had never known about her mother's hidden talent. As Maria continued to play, something remarkable happened to her entire appearance. Her posture straightened, her face lit up with joy, and a confidence seemed to radiate from her that transformed her more completely than any fancy clothes or makeup could have done. She no longer looked like a tired cleaning woman, she looked like an artist. The broken keys of the piano became less of an obstacle and more of a creative challenge. When she encountered one, she'd improvise around it so skillfully that listeners familiar with the piece would think it was intentional. The piano's imperfections became part of her unique interpretation. Mrs. Patel noticed a distinguished-looking man watching Maria with intense interest. She recognized him as Daniel Chen, a famous music producer who had organized charity concerts all over the world. He was recording the performance on his phone, his expression one of disbelief and discovery. As the piece reached its dramatic finale, Maria's entire body seemed to pour energy into the music. Her fingers struck the final chords with perfect timing and power. The last notes rang out through the ballroom, hanging in the air like magic. This time, the applause began immediately. A roaring, standing ovation that seemed to shake the crystal chandeliers. The applause seemed to go on forever. Maria finally stood from the piano bench, her legs a little shaky. She gave a small, awkward bow, unsure of the proper way to accept such overwhelming praise. People continued clapping, some wiping tears from their eyes. Tyler had disappeared into the crowd, but his father approached the piano. He was a tall man with silver hair and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. "That was extraordinary," he said, extending his hand to Maria. "I'm Robert Thompson. I believe my son owes you an apology, but I hope you'll accept mine in the meantime." Maria shook his hand, still feeling like she was in a dream. "Thank you, sir. It's fine, really." "It's not fine," he said firmly. "But your talent certainly is." He gestured to a man standing nearby. "This is my friend Daniel Chen. He might want to speak with you." Daniel stepped forward, his eyes bright with excitement. "Mrs. Cortez," Maria supplied. "Maria Cortez." "Mrs. Cortez, I work with musicians around the world. What you just did," he shook his head in amazement. "Most trained concert pianists couldn't play like that on a perfectly tuned instrument, let alone this old thing." He patted the piano. "Where did you study?" The question brought Maria back to reality. "I didn't, sir. Not formally. I had lessons in my village when I was young, but," she trailed off, thinking of the scholarship letter still tucked away in a box under her bed. A crowd had gathered around them now, everyone eager to hear Maria's story. Mrs. Patol stood nearby, looking both proud and confused, as if seeing one of her employees for the first time. "You never studied at a conservatory?" asked an older woman in an expensive blue dress. "But that Liszt piece requires years of training." Maria folded her hands in front of her apron, suddenly aware again of her work clothes. "My teacher in Mexico said I had a gift," she said quietly. "I practiced whenever I could. The church let me use their piano." "What happened?" Daniel asked gently. "Why aren't you performing professionally?" A lump formed in Maria's throat. How could she explain the complicated path her life had taken? The choices made out of love and necessity rather than personal ambition. "Life happened," she said simply. "My father got sick when I was 18. I stayed to help my mother care for him and my younger brothers." The guests exchanged glances. This wasn't the usual small talk they made at charity events. "Later, I came to this country," Maria continued. "I got married, had children. My husband left when they were small. There was never time for piano after that. Just work." Daniel nodded thoughtfully. "And yet you can still play like that after all these years." Maria looked back at the piano with a small smile. "I guess I never really forgot. My hands remembered." "Would you play one more piece for us?" Robert asked. "Something of your choosing." The crowd murmured their agreement. Phones were already raised, ready to capture whatever came next. Maria thought for a moment, then nodded. She returned to the piano bench and settled herself once more. This time, she chose something gentler. Debussy's Clair de Lune. As she played the first delicate notes, she thought of her father and how he would have loved to see this moment. The gentle, dreamy music floated through the room like moonlight itself. Maria played with a tenderness that touched everyone present. Even the servers had stopped to listen, trays held forgotten in their hands. When the final notes faded away, there was a moment of perfect silence before the applause began again, softer this time, respectful of the spell she had cast. Daniel approached her with a business card. "Mrs. Cortez, I would very much like to talk with you about recording some pieces. Your interpretation is unlike anything I've heard before." Maria stared at the card in shock. "Recording? Me?" "Yes, you," he said with a warm smile. "It's never too late for talent like yours to be recognized." Tears filled Maria's eyes as she took the card with trembling fingers. 28 years of setting aside her dreams, and now this, all because someone had tried to make her the butt of a joke. The next morning, Maria sat at her small kitchen table, staring at Daniel Chen's business card. Sunlight streamed through the window, lighting up the simple room. Her daughter Lucia stood by the stove, making coffee and glancing at her mother with worried eyes. "Mama, you're so quiet. Are you okay?" Lucia asked. "I still can't believe what Anna told me about last night. She showed me the video. Why didn't you ever tell me you could play like that?" Maria sighed, running her finger along the edge of the card. It was from another life, me here. Before you were born. Before everything. But you're amazing, Lucia exclaimed, bringing 2 steaming cups to the table. Everyone at work is talking about it. Anna said her phone won't stop buzzing with people asking about the video. The video? Maria had almost forgotten that people had recorded her playing. By now, how many had seen it? The thought made her stomach tighten with nervousness. The phone rang, making both women jump. Lucia answered it, then held it out to her mother. It's for you. That music man from last night. With shaking hands, Maria took the phone. Hello. Mrs. Cortez, Daniel's warm voice came through. I hope I'm not calling too early. I couldn't wait to speak with you again. Have you thought about my offer? I don't know, Mr. Chen. I'm just a cleaning lady. I haven't played in public since I was a girl. After what I saw last night, I can assure you that you are far more than just anything, Daniel replied. I've already spoken with several colleagues. We'd like you to come to the studio next week, just to record a few pieces, see how it feels. No pressure. No pressure. But Maria felt it anyway, the weight of possibilities opening up before her. What would her father have said if he could see this moment? He had always believed in her talent, even when they couldn't afford to nurture it. Can I think about it? She asked. Of course, but don't think too long, Daniel said kindly. Sometimes life gives us second chances when we least expect them. After hanging up, Maria told Lucia about the offer. Her daughter's eyes filled with tears. You have to do it, Mama. This could change everything. I have my cleaning jobs scheduled all next week, Maria said, practical as always. Mrs. Goldstein needs her house done before her dinner party, and the ones are expecting me on Thursday. Lucia grabbed her mother's hands. Mama, listen to me. Those houses will still be dirty next month. This chance might not come again. That afternoon, Maria's phone kept ringing. Mrs. Patel called to tell her she didn't need to come in for her regular shift. The owner of the hotel wanted to offer her a special position playing piano in their lobby 3 nights a week. Then came a call from a local news station wanting to interview the Cinderella piano lady, the name people had given her after the video went viral. Even Tyler Thompson called, his voice small and embarrassed, offering a genuine apology. By evening, Maria found herself sitting at her neighbor's old upright piano, the one she'd secretly longed to play whenever she visited, but had always been too shy to ask. Her fingers moved slowly at first, then with growing confidence as the familiar joy of music filled her again. Her neighbor watched with amazement. I've lived next door to you for 7 years, Maria. How did I not know you could play like this? Sometimes we keep the best parts of ourselves hidden, Maria replied softly. Even from ourselves. 3 months later, Maria stood backstage at her first real concert. She wore a simple but elegant blue dress, nothing flashy, but worlds away from her cleaning uniform. Through the curtain, she could see the sold-out community theater filled with people who had come to hear her play. Daniel appeared at her side. Ready? Maria nodded, thinking of the journey that had brought her here. A cruel joke had turned into the greatest gift, the return of her music, the chance to begin again at 54. You know, Daniel said, we've raised enough from ticket sales to fund music lessons for 20 children who couldn't otherwise afford them. Maria smiled. Then it was all worth it. As she walked onto the stage to thunderous applause, Maria thought of her father's words from long ago. Your music will find its way out somehow. Real talent always does. How right he had been. Sometimes life's most beautiful melodies come after the longest pauses.